Before we begin, I want to warn you that this story contains mature themes. It deals with the challenges of relationships and family, dynamics and infidelity. If these topics make you uncomfortable, you might want to stop watching now. I used to believe my life was perfect. Picture this: a beautiful home in the suburbs, a devoted husband who loved me unconditionally, and a life that seemed, at least on the surface, like something out of a fairy tale. We had everything we thought we wanted, the kind of life that makes your friends a little jealous and your family proud. But life has a strange way of revealing cracks and even the most polished surfaces. I met Daniel when I was 24. He was a bit older, 31 at the time, but that didn't matter. He had this confidence about him, like he knew exactly where his life was heading, and I was instantly drawn to that. We met at a coffee shop downtown, both reaching for the same blueberry muffin. It sounds cliché, I know, but in that moment when our hands touched, I felt a spark, one of those ridiculous heart-racing, movie-like moments that you don't think happen in real life, but there it was. We dated for 5 years before getting married. Our relationship felt effortless. We'd stay up late talking about everything and nothing, our dreams, our fears, the kind of house we'd want, the trips we'd take. We had our own little world filled with inside jokes, shared glances across crowded rooms, and lazy Sunday mornings spent tangled in each other's arms. He was thoughtful, attentive, and always knew how to make me laugh, even on my worst days. Our wedding was perfect. It wasn't some grand, extravagant affair, but it didn't need to be. It was just us surrounded by the people we loved, promising forever. And for a while, it felt like forever was exactly where we were headed. But as the years went on, something shifted not all at once. It wasn't like we woke up one day and realized we were strangers. It was slow, almost imperceptible, the kind of change you only notice when you stop to really look. Daniel still loved me. I never doubted that, but the spark that once set my heart ablaze started to dim. The passionate kisses turned into quick pecks on the cheek. The late-night talks became brief exchanges about bills and grocery lists. We were still a team, still partners in every sense of the word, but the intimacy, the excitement, it wasn't the same. At first, I thought maybe it was just the natural progression of marriage. I mean, who stays in that honeymoon phase forever, right? Life gets busy, routines take over, and you settle into comfort. But deep down, I missed the way he used to look at me like I was the only woman in the world. I missed feeling desired. And then Gabriella came into our lives. It wasn't anything dramatic. We hired her as a maid, simple as that. Daniel had been working longer hours, and I was juggling my job and managing the house cleaning. It became this overwhelming task that neither of us had the energy for. I didn't even know it was waiting to burn. At first, I convinced myself that Gabriella was just refreshing. Someone new to talk to in the house, someone who brought a little lightness to the monotony of my day. But it didn't take long before I realized it was more than that. I started to notice things, small things that at first seemed insignificant. The way my heart would beat just a little faster when I heard the door click open, signaling her arrival, the way I'd catch myself checking the mirror before she got there, smoothing my hair or adjusting my top, even though I told myself it was nothing, but it was something. I just wasn't ready to admit yet. Gabriella had this way of making me feel seen, not in some obvious flirtatious way. It was more subtle than that she remembered things about me, things Daniel had long forgotten or maybe never noticed in the first place, like how I preferred my coffee with just a splash of cream, no sugar, or how I always hummed the same tune when I was deep in thought, even though I didn't realize I did it. One day I mentioned offhand that I had a headache. Nothing major, just a passing comment, but the next time she came over, she brought this little tin of peppermint oil and said it might help. It was such a small gesture, but it stuck with me. Daniel wouldn't have even thought twice about something like that, and it wasn't just what she remembered. It was how she looked at me. There was this intensity in her gaze, respectful, sure, but focused, like she was really seeing me, like she noticed the parts of me that had started to fade in the background of my own life. Our conversation started simple. She'd ask how my day was, I'd ask about hers, but soon we were talking about more than just the weather or what needed cleaning. We'd sit at the kitchen table after she finished her work, sipping tea and laughing about silly things. She'd tell me stories about her childhood, her dreams, and her frustrations. and I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't in years. I told her about my job, my marriage, and the little things that weighed on me but felt too trivial to mention to Daniel. The moment our skin touched, a spark shot through me. I could see it in her eyes. She felt it too. I didn't pull away. Neither did she. Instead, I found myself telling her things I hadn't even admitted to myself. How lonely I'd been feeling, how disconnected I felt from Daniel despite loving him, how I missed feeling desired, feeling wanted. Gabriella didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, her eyes soft and understanding, and then she whispered, "You deserve to feel wanted." My heart pounded in my chest. I knew I should pull away and create distance, but I didn't. I couldn't. There was something intoxicating about the way she made me feel that night. Nothing physical happened, but something far more dangerous had begun. An emotional line has been crossed, and once that line is crossed, there's no going back. It was a Thursday evening. I remember that because Daniel always had late meetings on Thursdays, and the house felt emptier than usual. The sky outside was heavy, swollen with dark clouds that promised. By the time Gabriella arrived, the storm had rolled in, drenching everything in sight. Her face bathed in that warm golden light. She looked beautiful, more than beautiful. She looked real in a way that made my heart ache. We were talking about nothing. How unpredictable the weather had been, how the power company never seemed to fix outages quickly. But under the surface, there was a tension neither of us acknowledged. It buzzed between us, pulling tighter with every passing second, and then it happened. Our hands brushed as we both reached for the same mug. It was innocent, or should have been at least, but the moment our skin touched, time seemed to slow. I didn't pull my hand away, neither did she. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat, we just stayed there. Frozen, but everything inside me was on fire. I finally pulled back, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. I tried to laugh it off, make some joke about us being clumsy, but the words got stuck in my throat. Gabriella didn't say anything. She just looked at me, her eyes soft but intense, and in that look I saw everything I'd been trying to ignore, the desire, the understanding, the want. The room felt too small, my skin felt too tight. I told myself to stand up, to walk away, to put some distance between us, but I didn't move. The next time our eyes met, she didn't hesitate. She leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to stop her, but I didn't. I couldn't. Her lips met mine, and in that instant, the world fell away. It wasn't rushed or frantic. It was slow and deliberate, like we were both savoring a secret we'd been holding on to for too long. Her lips were soft and warm, and the taste of her sent a jolt through my entire body. I'd never kissed a woman before. I'd never even thought about it. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was how right it felt, how alive I suddenly was. When I finally pulled back, I was breathless. My heart was racing, and my skin was tingling. I stared at her, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. "I can't," I whispered, my voice barely audible. But even as I said the words, I knew they were a lie, because my body was still leaning towards her, because every part of me was screaming for more. Gabriella didn't push. She just sat there, her eyes searching mine. "I've wanted to do that for a long time," she admitted softly. Her voice was steady, but there was a vulnerability in her words that caught me off guard. But I didn't want to overstep. I didn't want to ruin anything. Her honesty hit me harder than the kiss had. This wasn't just some fleeting attraction for her. She felt something, and that scared me more than anything. A fleeting lapse in judgment. But no matter how hard I tried to push Gabriella from my mind, she was there in every quiet moment, in every empty space Daniel left behind. She lingered. I thought avoiding her would make it easier. I tried staying out longer when I knew she'd be at the house. I'd busy myself with errands or pretend I had extra work to do, but the moment I walked through that door and caught even the faintest trace of her perfume in the air, my resolve crumbled. It wasn't just physical, it was the pull. An invisible thread that connected us was tightening with every glance, every accidental touch. Our interactions changed. They were charged now, electric. The simple act of passing a dishcloth or brushing by each other in the hallway felt like a spark waiting to ignite. We didn't have to say anything, it was all in the looks. The lingering silences that said more than words ever could. Then came the first secret meeting. Daniel had left early for a weekend business trip. I told myself it would be the perfect time to clear my head, to reset, but the minute Gabriella walked through the door, all those good intentions vanished. I offered her coffee, pretending everything was normal. But when our fingers touched as I handed her the mug, we both froze. The air felt thick, suffocating, and then without thinking, I pulled her towards me. What started as a stolen kiss in the kitchen quickly spiraled. We found ourselves tangled on the couch, our hands exploring, hearts racing. It wasn't just lust. It was like we were trying to make up for every moment we pretended. This wasn't happening afterwards. I sat there breathless and overwhelmed. Gabriella rested her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen and desired in a way I hadn't felt in years. But when she left and the house fell silent again, the weight of what we'd done hit me. Daniel returned the next day, completely unaware of the betrayal that had taken place in our living room. He kissed me hello, wrapped his arms around me like he always did, and I felt a knot twist in my stomach. "I swear the house looks better every time I come home," he said with a chuckle. "Gabriella's worth every penny." I forced a smile, nodding along, but inside I was unraveling. Had no idea, no clue that the woman he trusted to keep our home clean had touched me in ways he hadn't in years. The guilt gnawed at me, but it wasn't enough to stop what was happening. The affair intensified. We became reckless in our caution, finding moments when Daniel was at work or running errands. A brush of the hand while folding laundry turned into stolen kisses behind closed doors. Whispered conversations in the hallway turned into hurried, breathless encounters in the guest room. And through it all, Daniel remained oblivious. He was still the loving husband he'd always been, still thoughtful and kind, but every time he looked at me with that familiar warmth, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. I loved him. I did, but with Gabriella, it was different. She made me feel alive in a way. Daniel hadn't in years. She saw parts of me. I didn't even realize they were missing, but the guilt was always there, like a shadow following me through every interaction with Daniel. I'd catch myself studying his face, wondering if he suspected anything, but he never did. He trusted me completely, and that trust made everything worse. I started to question everything. Did I love Daniel enough to stay, or had I outgrown the life we built together? Was love enough when passion and desire had found a new home in someone else? I didn't have the answers. All I knew was that I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and with every secret touch and every whispered promise, I was stepping closer to the fall. It was a Tuesday evening, and Daniel wasn't supposed to be home for hours. He had told me he had a late meeting, something with a client that would keep him tied up well past dinner, so when Gabriella showed up, it felt like we had all the time in the world. We were in the living room, our usual caution tossed aside. Her hands were on my waist, her lips trailing soft, dangerous kisses along my neck. The sound of the rain tapping against the windows was the only thing filling the room, until I heard the unmistakable sound of keys jingling in the lock for a second. I froze, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Gabriella's eyes widened in panic, and we scrambled. I fixed my hair and smoothed out my clothes. Gabriella darted towards the back hallway. Daniel's voice echoed from the front door. "Babe, I'm home early." I barely managed to stay calm in my breathing before he rounded the corner, his face lighting up when he saw me, but I knew I didn't look like myself. My face flushed, my shirt slightly askew. "Hey," he said, dropping his bag by the door. "Surprised to see Gabriella's car outside? I thought she was done for the day." I forced a smile. "Oh yeah, she just left." I was tidying up after. He didn't question it, but I could feel the walls closing in from that night on. Something shifted. Daniel didn't say anything outright, but I could tell he was watching me closer. He started noticing the little things, the way I seemed distracted during our conversations, how I'd drift off in the middle of a sentence, lost in thoughts. I couldn't share one evening when we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, something we used to enjoy together, but I wasn't there. My mind was elsewhere, tangled up in memories of Gabriella's touch and her voice whispering in my ear. "You okay?" Daniel asked, his eyes narrowing just slightly. "Yeah, I'm fine," I replied too quickly, my voice too light, but I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. He didn't press, but the seed had been planted. Then came the night everything unraveled. Daniel had gone out for drinks with friends, or so I thought. Gabriella was at the house, and we were careless. We didn't expect him home for hours. We were in the bedroom, our bedroom, when I heard the front door slam shut. Panic surged through me. Gabriella scrambled, grabbing her things, and darted into the adjoining bathroom. I barely had time to adjust my clothes when I heard Daniel's footsteps in the hallway. Then the doorknob rattled. It was locked. "Why is the door locked?" he called out, his voice calm but laced with suspicion. I fumbled with the lock, my hands trembling. When I finally opened the door, Daniel stood there, his eyes scanning my face and my disheveled hair, the flushed look I couldn't hide. "I was just taking a nap," I stammered, my voice shaky. His eyes darted past me into the room, then back to me. "Where's Gabriella?" My heart dropped. She left earlier, but the lie hung heavy in the air. Daniel didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me, and in that silence, I felt everything crumble. "Tell me the truth," he finally whispered, his voice low, almost broken. "What's going on?" I couldn't lie anymore. The guilt was suffocating, pressing down on me until I couldn't breathe. "I'm sorry," I whispered. My voice was barely audible. "It's Gabriella." I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did, but I couldn't stop it. Daniel stepped back like I'd slapped him, his face pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. Was I never enough? I thought about Daniel's laugh, the way his eyes used to light up when he looked at me, and I asked myself the question I couldn't escape. Was it worth it? I gained something, sure. Gabriella showed me a side of myself I never knew existed. She made me feel seen, desired, alive, but at what cost? I lost the man who loved me unconditionally. I lost the comfort of a life we built together, the trust we shared. I lost the version of myself I thought I knew, the woman who believed she'd never betray. I don't know if Daniel will ever forgive me. I don't know if I even deserve it. And I don't know if this was just a mistake or the beginning of something I needed to face all along. But here's what I do know. I never thought I'd be the one who betrays, but life has a way of leading you into the unknown. And sometimes you don't find your true self until you cross a line you can never cross.